Hello and welcome everyone. I'm your host Stefan Burns, geologist, geophysicist, space weather guy. We just had a magnitude 6.1 earthquake strike off the west coast of Cuba. Yes, in the Gulf itself, a reverse thrust earthquake down about 26 kilometers. So it's about 15 miles. This is a significant event. If you're in the magnitude 6 range, things start to become significant, first and foremost. B, the last time that there was an earthquake in this location was the year 1880. So it's been a long time, 146 years. This being a reverse thrust earthquake and fairly shallow means that technically a tsunami could have been generated. Thankfully, none was. You typically need the earthquake to be bigger, magnitude 7 minimum, and typically we really don't see tsunamis unless it's magnitude 7.5 or greater, reverse thrust and shallow. But this is kind of a warning to the Gulf, Yucatan, Mexico, all the coastal states here, of course, Cuba, other islands nearby, that they could have a big earthquake and a big tsunami hit them. Because while our historic record does not show any earthquakes in this region here over magnitude 6, right? None over magnitude 7, that doesn't mean it's not possible. We do have anomalous earthquakes that have struck in areas where typically you don't expect them in the magnitude 7 plus range. We'll look at the historic data just for the globe. A few key examples, okay? We are going to go over what's happening right now, and this was felt all over Florida. Reports are coming in. Now, Florida is about like 600 kilometers away from this epicenter. So this is significant. Here, let's specifically measure this right now, and I'll give this also in freedom units in a little bit. But we see here 600 kilometers, to the very southern tip, 522 kilometers, to Miami, 667 kilometers. Let's just click it right there, 611 kilometers. And I think we can switch this to freedom units for miles, and we get 379 miles, all right? So this is a fact that this was felt all the way in Florida, I think is really quite significant. Let's even actually put on our labels here so we can see this. So here we are. Now, there is no tsunami threat, warning, advisory, or watch for this. There was yesterday for the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck the Philippines. And just FYI, if you're wondering, if you're hearing some noise in the background, the gardeners are going nuts right now. Apologies. You may not hear it at all. But this is almost the exact same sort of earthquake that struck the Philippines, other than the magnitude being less, which is very interesting to me. The fact that we get the strongest earthquake in 2026 to strike the Philippines, magnitude 7.8, a big reverse thrust sequence, and then less than 24 hours later, we get this 6.1 to strike here in the Gulf. Call it the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, I don't care. Gulf of Mexico, America, all right? Just the Gulf. It happened right off the west coast of Cuba. Again, no tsunami threat from this, but it's technically possible. It's technically possible. That's what I want to bring to your attention today, other than just reporting on this for you, just the straight facts, what happened, etc. Here we see the location of this earthquake, okay? So here is the 6.1. They have not downgraded or anything, though if we go back to the NOAA site, you see that it came in, the very first initial estimates were 6.4, and then after crunching the data, USGS came out, said it's a 6.1, and we see it's 26 kilometers in depth. It occurred right at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, okay? So EDT, 2 p.m., because they're UTC -4, we see this came in at 1800 UTC. So a big earthquake in an unusual location. Here we see our interactive map for this. So let's look specifically. Maybe that's not the right one. Let's go to our overview here. And is this Oh, this is a different earthquake. So we're going to exit out of here. That's not what we want. I think this is the one that we want. Okay, here is our 6.1 right here. And we see our contour lines for the intensity of the shaking. Again, this was off the coast. So even if you were right there floating on a boat, you're not really feeling it because water does not transmit shear waves. And so there may be like a little compressional jolt, but you're not feeling this on a boat, okay? So no one really felt the strong shaking that this generated, but there have been reports of a jolt, of a boom, swaying all across the area. You see one report here from Havana. Maybe there's a couple more. This is a 10-kilometer zone box. If we switch to our, yeah, so we have a couple reports here coming in from Havana of just weak shaking. We'll get a key up here. But then if we go back to our 10 kilometer, this shows up a little better in general. And if we look, we see that Florida is covered with reports, okay? So this wasn't just Cuba. We also see reports coming in here from Cancun, the Yucatan, even going all the way over here to, what is this, Merida? I haven't been to the Yucatan yet. But interesting that the epicenter for this is effectively equidistant to these three big areas: Cuba, Yucatan, Florida. And I'll just touch on this briefly right now. We may talk about it more later, but something that I've mentioned before, and I don't have any hard proof for this, okay? So just take this with a liberal heap of salt. But we do see this connection between earthquakes and geopolitical activity. It's very bizarre. I don't know how to explain it, but if you just simply pay attention, you notice it time and time again. Well, Cuba right now is like under blockade. They're having crazy power outages and oil shortages and food shortages because of the situation with the American blockade. Also, due to their own, failings as a government, but it's a whole complex, nuanced, double-sided, triple-sided story. Of course, the United States wants to take over Cuba, or at least this current administration does. They want to control the Caribbean, the choke points going into Texas, the flow of oil, ships, and more. So there is this huge geopolitical situation right now with Cuba. And then we get this historic earthquake to strike today, the 8th of June, 2026, last big one being in 1880. But you see these reports all across Florida. So you don't live in Florida and think, okay, yeah, this is earthquake country. And it's not really, but earthquakes can strike in unforeseen circumstances and kind of out of the normal zone locations. It's certainly possible. So people getting a wake-up call here. This is, at least, I think it's important to realize that these things happen, and they happen more often on a geologic time scale than we probably are even really aware of. Here we look at our historic seismicity. We don't want our historic seismicity, though that's kind of useful. We want to see our, maybe they don't have it. There is a option on the USGS to show like US hazard, but it's not showing it on this one. We'll have to go back to the other one. So here's, check it out. We can check out our US hazard. Here it is. And so here we see our US hazard, and we see that we have high seismic zones going from New Madrid, the East Tennessee seismic zone, and then also down here to, what is this, Charleston. And this is because they had a big quake back in the 1800s. So you see that most of the United States, at least this part, eastern US, which most people think is totally fine, grayed out, no risk, no hazard. Yeah, it's probably accurate in general, but if we kind of incorporate like unforeseen historic events that could occur, well, I don't think any single location is necessarily safe. Now, most people will live their life, never experience something. That's what happened today. What happened today is that a lot of people who've lived in Florida their whole life, lived in the Yucatan their whole life, they experienced their first significant earthquake. And they're like, oh, wow, this is kind of crazy. So here we're going to look at our historic activity. And this goes way back in time. How far did I set this back? I set this back to the year 1500, okay, for the Caribbean. Here we see this other magnitude 6 earthquake that struck just 15 kilometers down according to the calculation. This is 1880, specifically January 23rd. So that was on the island itself. You're not going to get obviously tsunami from an earthquake that's striking land like that, but if it's off the coast, well, you could get that sort of rupture. So we go back to our newest here. So you don't see, going all the way back to year 1500, you don't see any earthquakes in the Gulf. This is actually the first one. Like in the Gulf itself, with the oceanic crust, this is the first one that we have records of over magnitude 6. This is a historic earthquake, as we're finding out right now. Now we see here, this is the 1886 Charleston earthquake. Interesting that this was in 1880. That's in 1886. We have our first new repeat effectively of this location in 146 years. Well, you know, this earthquake being in this location is spreading seismic energy all across the US like this. And so those faults, which slowly build up stress and strain, just got a new additional dose of strain put on them, which hopefully just adds into quite a bit of headroom still. But you have this rupture, healing, and loading phase that exists. So you get the big rupture, and then there's kind of this healing phase where things rebound and reset, and then you get energy to reload onto the fault until it ruptures again. Every single fault has its own reoccurrence interval. Of course, there's variation in between. Let's say like the San Andreas has a reoccurrence interval of 150 years. I'm just making numbers up. It's pretty close to accurate. 150 years. You may get 200 years, and then 115 years, and then 300 years, and then 75 years. Like there's a range, but the overall average reoccurrence will be 150. So we only have 2 data points here. So right now, our reoccurrence interval for this zone right there is about 150 years. But that's pushing energy out. And when you get this seismic energy to hit and then hit these faults and load on, it's just getting it a little bit closer to rupture than it would have been otherwise. So very, very interesting that this is happening. Now, of course, you see tons of activity in the Caribbean because this is a very active setting geologically. Really, it's really quite wild. If we go to our largest magnitude earthquakes for the zone, we see an 8.5 here, Guadalupe, 1843. You see that right there. 8.2 Mexico, that was in 2017. 8.0 there, Mexico. So Mexico gets big earthquakes, as you can tell, right in that location. But you're going to see some other big earthquakes here. Now, let's go to our oldest quakes, because you'll see some interesting ones pop off. 16, 15, magnitude 7.5. Here we have 1690, 7.5, 6.9. And now we start to get New Madrid. Because I did draw that box up extending a little bit. But as I mentioned earlier, these quakes can occur in random locations. This 6.1 being a good example of that. Though you have to just in general look at the geology. And yeah, there's a plate boundary here very clearly. You get this big subduction trench. You will also notice that one of our latest quakes here is this magnitude 7.6 Cayman Islands. That was last year in February. Okay, so more than a year ago now, but recent geologically. That did not generate a tsunami. We can look at the quake here. You see it's a perfect strike slip. With this moment tensor, this tells you it's a perfect strike slip. The rake there being 2 or 175, 0 and 180 means that they're sliding past each other. So basically, you're not going to get a tsunami from something like that because the plates are just grinding past. And if we go back again, well, I guess we just expanded that out. We see that this is occurring along that known junction, and we get this big trench where you're getting plate motion accommodated there. But I mean, look at this, very clearly a very obvious geologic structure, not only represented with the landmass of Cuba itself, the island, but also with this underwater ridge slash cliff trench, just this feature, very clear scarp there. So there are faults clearly that exist here that just aren't well known because, well, we haven't had the earthquakes to really highlight those structures. So guaranteed, like the next 6 months, next 12, 18, 24 months, there's going to be a bunch of research papers that come out utilizing the seismic data collected from this, because we have this whole seismic network exists, that will help us better understand this area. Okay, so that would be good. Thankfully, it doesn't seem that there's any damage created from this earthquake. Magnitude 6.1. I didn't see any videos coming in from Havana, Cuba, of anything bad, because again, everywhere just felt weak shaking, just light, weak shaking, kind of just a hit. Some people heard a boom, but some people didn't feel it at all. I texted my friend Matt. You may know him, Matt Bell. He has the Matt Bell Limitless podcast, and he's in Sarasota. He didn't feel it, but a lot of people did feel it, especially if you were like at home, sitting down, it's quiet, you're laying down, something like that. If you're driving around the car or you're running around, you're probably not going to feel it because it's so quick. You kind of need quiet circumstances. And we get these reports here. I did a post on X about this. Let's refresh it, make sure we have the latest stuff here. And we can read the comments here. So, felt it in Orlando, 4th floor. A lot of people reported it. Felt in Cancun, felt it in Tampa. Maybe that's the same person. No, Tampa, 4th floor. Southwest Florida feeling it. Felt very strongly West Coast of Florida. Rocking and rolling. Yeah, so felt reports as far as Orlando as far as feeling tremors from it. People are saying that the earthquake machine has been turned on. Felt it in Fort Myers. Is this beginning of the war with Cuba? Right. So there's these other ideas as well. But so far, a lot of people feeling this all across Florida. And if we go here, I want to show you how these earthquakes can occur in far-flung locations. All right. So I'm by no means saying that, you know, some earthquake that could generate a significant tsunami is going to happen in the Gulf imminently. I'm just basically suggesting that it's possible. We don't know everything. The chance of it happening is very, very low. But this is a little bit of just a wake-up call, I would say, for people living in these locations to be aware of this possibility. And it's that you don't have just hurricanes to worry about, though by far you should really be, if you're focused on anything, hurricanes are the big deal to be focused on. But you should, like, at least have a plan for an earthquake to find your gathering location and to know how to execute on that, because everyone should be aware of this. Now, if we go up here, look at this. This is all earthquakes magnitude 7 or greater. I think going back to the year 1800. Yeah, year 1800. Okay, so we'll keep it on newest first. But look at this earthquake right here. Magnitude 7.4, Russia, middle of Eurasia. Okay, now different geologic setting, of course, but middle of Eurasia, magnitude 7.4, depth 25 kilometers. Look at Mongolia here. Now, Mongolia has an interesting geologic setting, but you will notice a lot of big earthquakes in here. You had these magnitude 8 quakes that struck in 1905. Like, you can get big earthquakes far away from these main plate tectonic boundaries. That's kind of what I'm showing you here. We can zoom over to North America. Check this out. Here's some more examples. We have a magnitude 7.2 here. This was in 1929, magnitude 7.2, depth unknown. It says 10 kilometers. I'm not sure that is the actual depth. That's the default value that they use if they don't know the depth. So keep that in mind. Magnitude 7.4, Baffin Bay, right? There's nothing showing up as it relates to plate boundaries or anything like this. And this is, what, 15 kilometers down, 1933. There's no reason why the Gulf can't have an earthquake like Baffin Bay, effectively. There's no reason why it can't. It just hasn't happened yet. So we have a 6.1 right here. Thankfully, just a 6.1. But you could get some random magnitude 7 to pop off. It probably happens at a very, very, very rarely on a geologic time scale. Probably like once every, could be thousands of year reoccurrence interval. But we do see some examples with our 226-year data set here, about 225 years, of these random quakes striking well outside of normal tectonic zones. Magnitude 7 there is Zimbabwe. Now here you have the Rift Valley, but you get the point. 7.1, Southeast Indian Ridge, close to the zone. This was recent. This is 2015 right here, but still in the oceanic crust. Another example there, 8.1. Now again, close to the spreading center, but 8.1. What's happening? Like, these big quakes in these locations are certainly possible. So I want to see if this is updated. This would really, bummer. Okay. So this has just happened in the past about 2.5 hours now with Florida. And Florida is going to keep floating. No tsunami from this though, reverse thrust. Let's look at the moment tensor plot for this. Again, I want to zoom out. So we can go to our moment tensor. They calculated magnitude 6.06, depth 23.5 kilometers. And if we look specifically at the stats here, we see 107. There's two fault solutions. When you get these seismic waveforms to come in, you get two different fault plane solutions. One of them is going to be accurate. The other one is going to be inaccurate. But you're not able to tell unless you have very clear regional geology to lean on, effectively telling you know the slope of the fault already. You already know the strike of it, etc. Or if you get tons of events and one of the fault solutions really clearly emerges consistently across different earthquakes. So we have two different strikes here. This is like the compass direction, 310 degrees, 153 degrees, okay. We have the slope here of the two fault solutions, both at 46 degrees. So we can be reasonably assured that the fault angle is sloping down 46 degrees, or to just approximate it, exactly 45, in between 90 and 0. So 45-degree slope. And then we look at our rake. If it's a positive number, it tells us that it's moving up. If it's a negative number, it's moving down. Now, if it moves down like this, that's an extensional event. And because of the slope, you're actually kind of going like this. I'm trying to do this with my hands here for you guys. But you know, everything's expanding because it's moving down. If it's positive, it's a reverse thrust. And so instead you get this compression. See that? You get this compression going up like this. That is what's able to push up the water, especially if it's shallow and the ocean's fairly shallow there. But you can get that water get pushed up, and then that tsunami gets broadcast out in all directions. And so when the rake is close to 90, either positive or negative, that means it's exactly vertical motion with very little strike slip. Okay? Very little strike slip where the plates are grinding past each other. Again, that's what happened with the Cayman Islands quake last February, 7.6, 2025. Here we see that it's very close to 90. So there's a little bit of oblique component to it. We don't know if it was right lateral or left lateral, because we would need a little bit more information on this quake. But we see it's close to 90. So this is primarily a reverse thrust with a little bit of oblique motion to it. No tsunami from this, but definitely an unusual event. We can say that at a minimum. A very unusual event. Last time we had something like this, again, January 1880. And that was a magnitude 6 that struck the island itself. Instead, this one hit off the coast. And we hope that this is it. And we hope that's not foreshock. They're showing the depth there, 26 kilometers. But one thing to keep in mind, I think we have, yeah, this is the one that shows it, is that you do get this interesting clustering of earthquakes for North America. And that's just kind of the rule in general. But if you go to our oldest quakes here, you will see all these earthquakes that struck, and let's change this. You'll see all these earthquakes that struck New Madrid, all right? And let's go back. Oh, this goes all the way back to 1650. That's right. Okay, so here's all these earthquakes that struck New Madrid, Western Tennessee, New Madrid. You know, that's the very end of 1811, 1812, hugely destructive. That is going to happen again at some point. We don't want it to. It could just be a single magnitude 8. Like this can generate magnitude 8. So there's an old failed rift valley underneath the Mississippi and basically Memphis and this area, and it can generate these huge events, okay? But instead what happened back then was they had multiple magnitude 7s, like high magnitude 7s. So 7.5, 7.5, you get the deal. Also 6s and more. Well, the same time this occurred is when we had a big quake in Venezuela. So we will see this, or maybe, oh, I need to expand the box out a little bit. Let's do that. It's not going to show up unless I expand this box out. So let's expand the box down a little further. And let's also actually take it up to California. So we're going to get a much bigger area now. But let's use this region here. Because you'll see this interesting clustering of events that occurred. Again, we have this set for oldest. So here's New Madrid. And then we see our earthquakes here in California that popped off. Okay. So this was first a 7.5 San Bernardino. And then just 2 weeks later, Santa Barbara right there. Okay. Same time frame, less than a year. After New Madrid, 1812. This started 1811, went to 1812. This was in December of 1812. And then we also had this quake in Venezuela here around the same time frame. So here we see, and now you have to also take Wikipedia with a huge grain of salt, because there are like campaigns to remove proper good information from it. But in general, for certain things, you can use it for broad brush strokes. Let's just say that. But 1812 Caracas earthquake, you notice here, March 26, 1812, of course, 7.7 on the Richter scale. Big earthquake in 1812. So, well, let's go back here to Google Earth. And if we're talking about this whole sequence, you have New Madrid, 1811, 1812. I need to zoom out a little further. You have Venezuela and California all going off, boom, simultaneously, effectively, geologically. So this sort of clustering of events over a certain area can occur. And I'm not saying that the 6.1, that's like destiny for this. This is almost certainly like a one-off, but it is useful to keep in mind, especially because this is unusual location for seismic energy to be broadcasting out from. So very, very unusual there. Now, if we're lucky, this will have refreshed. No, this website here, they make really good visualizations of the seismic waves propagating out. Now, one that I can show you is the 7.8 from yesterday. Here's the magnitude 7.8 earthquake from the Philippines yesterday. We see the seismic energy from this radiating out across the globe. Okay? And so you see the compressional waves, the shear waves falling behind, and then the surface waves are the strongest, they are the slowest, and then they reach the antipode, they form this interference pattern, they converge again, and then they broadcast out like that. Though you're not going to feel strong shaking in Brazil, okay? The majority of the actual amplitude and shaking is for the Philippines, but these sort of big quakes are felt globally. So that is important to keep in mind. The antipode for Havana, Cuba. We can check it out right here. We're using Havana, Cuba as our location. The antipode is off the coast of Australia, here to the west. And I would say in general, this is a very weird location. We should be mindful of just this surrounding area right there of a reciprocal near antipodal quake anytime in the next month or so. Really most tightly like the next week, but we often see these antipodal quakes. They're not exactly on the antipode, they're slightly off because of how seismic waves deflect and propagate through the Earth. But we could be seeing maybe some activity here in Indonesia, Malaysia, etc. Maybe we see some unusual activity in Australia, or could be along the mid-ocean ridge centers here. Because if you look at our quake, our plate boundaries for the location, we see these plate boundaries there. This is the Antarctic and Australia, India plate boundary, but we get big earthquakes. Here, of course, this is the site of the magnitude 9 in 2004. So weird to get a magnitude 6.1 where we did in Cuba, and this is the rough antipode location for that. So we could be seeing an uptick in activity, magnitude 5.5 or greater in this location in the days, weeks, and perhaps month or so ahead. So that's basically what I had to report for you. I'm not going to hem and haw. So let's do a question and answer for this, because we've had some super thanks come in. I'll take some questions from the general audience as well. But let's go through this. Jen with a very generous super thanks here, gifting out some memberships. Thank you so much for that, and welcome everyone to the membership. The one, thank you for the super thanks. Boev, hey Stefan, I appreciate what you do. Can you check USGS for magnitude 7 plus quakes in Bulgaria since 1900, and do you think another could happen soon? Sure, we can do that. Let's take this map here and do it. So we'll modify our search, and you want magnitude 7 plus quakes for Bulgaria. And let's just really expand this out to the year 1500, and we'll zoom in specifically on the wonderful country of Bulgaria, which I've been to. I had a great time there in 2022. I'm sure I'll be back. Here we see our map. These are magnitude 7s. And we'll set this for newest first. Magnitude 7.2 in Turkey, Turkey. This is all the North Anatolia fault. Turkey. Here we have Bulgaria. So 7.1, 1928, 7.1, 1928. Clear double sequence, right? Separated in time by about 4 months. So you also sometimes get these double hits. We could have this with Florida. That 6.1 could get followed up with another near magnitude 6 earthquake. They don't happen that frequently, but as you can see, sometimes they do. And you don't get just one higher magnitude quake, you get like a sequence of them. That's what happened in New Madrid. You had multiple Mag 7 quakes and Mag 6s. And then we see here, well, these are really and then we see this one here, magnitude 7, 1904. So Bulgaria has had some magnitude 7s, low magnitude 7s, but nothing since 1928. So it's been nearly 100 years. I don't know the recurrence interval, but it very well can happen probably at any moment in time. I'll have to do more research on that. But yeah, to answer your question, do you think another could happen soon? Absolutely, absolutely. Because we see here the time in between is 1904, 1928. It's only 24 years in between. Then we get a double burst there. So you get 3 earthquakes in 25 years. And now it's been 100 years since. So yeah, you certainly could have one pop off tomorrow, like today. We hope not, but it's possible. I'm in Panama City, Florida. The entire panhandle felt this earthquake. Thank you, Jesse, for the super thanks. And Wayne, are there any connections with antipodal latitude and longitude? Yeah, we can look at that if we go to our USGS map and click 30 days. I do think, well, we did have this quake here of magnitude 6.0 Western Indian Antarctic Ridge on the 27th of May. But that's pretty far off the antipode, which is more over here. Again, if we look at that map, we see that it's really like directly west of that bend, that corner of Australia. So going back here, that's pretty far away from that. So I wouldn't really attribute that to an antipodal quake or something. So nothing really that we're seeing. I mean, the Philippines is kind of close to that. I mean, that's about as far, but this is a 7.8. So the bigger the quake, right, maybe the more significant that influence is. So it's not exactly antipodal, but kind of getting close. It's almost in range, I would say. So thank you for that super thanks. This is all there is. Felt an earthquake yesterday in Honolulu around 9:30 a.m. I'm not sure what you'd be feeling because you shouldn't have been feeling an earthquake in Honolulu. It's probably more likely, yeah, it was probably more likely like a car or something. I mean, I don't want to discount your experience, but the only earthquake you should have felt recently in Honolulu was the magnitude 6 that struck Hawaii, and that wasn't yesterday. That was, about 10 to 2 weeks ago, 10 days to 2 weeks ago. So thank you for the super thanks. Great things, V8C. Could this be a precursor to a new Madrid quake? Does this have anything to do with water temperature from Super El Nino? Is the Earth boiling below? A lot of questions. Probably not a precursor, and probably not related to water temperature from El Nino, which is more the Pacific and not necessarily the Atlantic. Is the Earth boiling below? The Earth, well, yeah, the mantle is molten. So there's tremendous energy and heat and pressure there. But probably a no to all three of those in the way that you're kind of asking. So thank you for the super thanks. Christopher, very strange and cloudy here in North Highlands, California. Thanks for the report and for the super thanks. Joseph is saying that radio propagation is walled off currently, can't get anywhere on shortwave bands. Interesting, thanks for the report on that. Goddess of Rocks, I may have missed the antipode for the Indonesia quake. Where is that and how does California, Los Angeles look? Yeah, the antipode is Brazil. So we will see this antipode perfectly with this animation here, the magnitude 7.8. We see how it focuses right over Brazil and the Amazon. So that is the antipode. As it relates to earthquakes for Southern California, LA, everything's overdue. Everything's ready. Question is when. It could be 50 years from now that we get a big magnitude 7.5 to strike the San Andreas. It could be this month with the World Cup. We don't know. But certainly, as it relates to California earthquake activity, everything's ready to go. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's all ready to go. Cowboys, thank you for the super thanks. Claire, thank you for the super thanks as well. Everything is good. Blessings to you. Hope it's all going well for you and everyone here watching. If you're new here, I'm your host, Stefan Burns, geologist, geophysicist, space weather guy. Why no aftershocks? A question from Kara. Thank you for the super thanks. Sometimes these sort of earthquakes are just these one-offs. But we probably should get a magnitude 5 aftershock or something in the magnitude 4 range. I mean, we should get some sort of aftershocks. Doesn't mean we have to get a whole bunch, but we probably should get something. So if we don't get any aftershocks at all, that's a little odd. It's not like we've never seen that before. I think the 7.6 that struck the Cayman Islands February 2026 right there, I don't think that one had any real significant aftershocks. So that does happen, but we should probably get some. But they don't, usually the highest magnitude aftershock will be 1 magnitude less. For in this case, it'd be magnitude 5. I think that equation can maybe get thrown out the window a little bit because this is so anomalous. It's an unusual location for this, but we probably should at least get some magnitude 3s or 4s. So we'll find out. Thank you for the super thanks. Graham, with the amount of big earthquakes striking, what are your predictions for a 8.5 or 9.0 plus megaquake to strike within the next few months? It's certainly possible. I mean, this Philippines quake was nearly that. So we nearly had that with the Philippines. It came in 7.8. That's pretty darn close to a megaquake. Megaquake is magnitude 8 or greater. Some people do use the magnitude 8.5 or greater for that. We had the 8.8 up here, Kamchatka last year. The last magnitude 9 plus quake was 2011, Japan. Before that, it was 9.0, Sumatra, 2004. Before that's all the way going back to Alaska, 9.2, 1964. And then before that, 9.5, 1960 in Chile, the largest earthquake ever observed with modern observations and seismographs and more. So I personally think that, well, your question's for the next few months. I personally think that within the next few years, we're definitely seeing like an 8.5 or 9. An interesting thing about Japan is that in 2011, here, let me move this for you. In 2011, we had the 9.1, and then in 2013, you had an ultra deep 8.3 Sea of Okhotsk. So, and you see this clear movement of earthquake energy going from Japan. I talked about that before. It's actually a members only video. You can watch that. It's talking about the plasma movement for earthquakes and everything. It's an interesting mini lecture. So it's very possible that we see a follow-up magnitude 8 plus quake further afield after this magnitude 8.8 megaquake. We could see it in the Sea of Okhotsk going down. We could see it in the Aleutian Islands. It could be anywhere in the zone. I think that's pretty likely. But yeah, I think that's enough of an answer for now, because that's like a whole super long topic and video. So thank you for your super thanks. James Pittman, according to the USGS, the earthquake hit 4.7 miles northwest of Weaverville, North Carolina at 4:52 a.m. It had a magnitude of 2.1 and depth of 11 kilometers near Asheville. Thanks for the update on the magnitude 2.1. I really don't report on earthquakes that tiny usually. I don't, unless your house is right over it, even then you're not feeling a magnitude 2 typically. But if you're in the area and you have an interest in this, that's great. So thanks for that information, James. And how accurate is older equipment in the 1800s to now? Definitely not as accurate, Jason. Thanks for that super thanks. So you have to take some of these older measurements with a grain of salt, but it is, the most important thing is, do we have a relative sense of the intensity of the earthquake? Yes. Do we now know the date and time and we can look at the waveforms? Yes, yes, yes. So that's the most important thing. But our earthquake records now, starting 1980 to the present day, are super high quality. So that's really the gold standard. And going before 1980, sure, there's some good stuff, obviously. But pre-1940, I would say, is when you have to start kind of looking at it through, squint a little bit, etc. Doesn't mean it's worthless information, but 1980 to now is our highest quality data. Maybe they're doing crazy experiments underneath Florida and this earthquake is a cover-up. Make up your own mind, do your own research. Personally, I don't think that's the case. I think this is an odd, unusual seismic event, but hey, I'm not going to rain on your parade. But I would say, if you are looking into some of these other ideas as it relates to earthquake weapons, whatever, in general, you can't just like spout off nonsense and expect to be taken seriously. You got to back it up with some data, okay? So again, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but for anyone that's into that and thinks that exists, we need to where are the receipts, baby? We need the receipts, because there are very unique signatures from earthquakes as compared to, let's say, an explosion. An explosion is a compressional wave that goes out. You have the actual molecules compressing like this, creating the shock wave. It's very, very fast. Earthquakes have compressional waves, shear waves, where you get the particles and the molecules jiggling past each other, and also surface waves, this rolling motion. Rayleigh waves, love waves, etc. So we need receipts. Rather than just saying, this is what it is, I'm not going to prove it. But anyone can believe what they want and more, but I want to see receipts, personally. Question from Florida. What about the sun? Do you think there will be another Carrington event anytime soon? We could have a Carrington event as soon as a sunspot forms for it. Carrington event, if you don't know, was a very powerful solar flare, solar explosion that generated a very big coronal mass ejection, very fast, hit Earth in less than 24 hours, triggered, it's the strongest impact that we know of other than historic Miyake events as they're known. Miyake, named after the Japanese researcher who discovered these via these huge radioisotope increases, order of magnitudes in tree rings. And there's other ways to define Miyake events too in the record. But these are, Miyake events specifically are hypothesized to come from super flares, which are 10 times at least stronger than the Carrington event. But you just need the sunspot to do it. You need that sunspot to rotate in view, solar broadside, boom shakalaka, you have the Carrington event. That can happen at any time, so long as you have the sunspot. So it could happen this solar cycle. The Carrington event 1859, let's look it up. We're actually waiting on a solar storm impact right now. It hasn't happened yet, but let's go to our solar cycle progression. Let's go to 1859. That wasn't necessarily the craziest solar cycle we've ever seen, okay? So we'll go back here and zone in. I mean, it was a big cycle, but it wasn't the craziest, again, it wasn't the craziest thing that we've ever seen. And it was September, it was August and September of 1859. So let's get this up a little higher for you guys. Here we see the line for that, okay? So yeah, sunspots were about 200 or so. Our highest sunspot count for solar cycle 25 was 215, August of 2024. So, but in general, we've been under 200. That was a 1 month where we surged over 200. But this wasn't the strongest solar cycle ever. You know, solar cycle 3 was super, super strong. Solar cycle 19 was super, super strong. This is solar cycle 10, a little bit stronger than average, but in general, pretty normal looking solar cycle, but huge, huge, huge sunspot formed and a huge, huge solar flare and coronal mass ejection happened. So it can happen at any time. Another Carrington event, effectively, maybe not as powerful, but pretty close, occurred in 1921. That's solar cycle 15. Look at solar cycle 15. Actually almost identical to solar cycle 25 because we had this surge over 200, but in general, it's been in this zone just like we have. Solar cycle 15 and 25, a lot of similarity between them. This occurred during the descending phase too. Again, it was in February. I think it was actually February 21, if I remember right. And so look there, sunspot numbers are not that high, but boom shakalaka, you get a huge, super fast solar storm impact near Carrington level. So, and we've dodged some Carrington level solar storms in solar cycle 24. Our last one in 2012, we had one in July that blasted off, missed the Earth. We also have one in this solar cycle. It was exactly opposite side of the Earth. If that had hit us, it would have been a Carrington level impact. So they happen. It's just a question of the sunspot, the big enough explosion aimed at Earth. Anytime soon, that's just, you can't really forecast that until you get the sunspot. Maybe with planetary geometry, maybe, but I haven't seen anything convincing for that precise of a forecast. Let's just say that. Linus is saying that the astrology for 1812 is similar to our current time. Interesting to note. I'll have to look that up. Is it true that it's best to sleep with your head south? If so, for the northern hemisphere, and if so, in the southern hemisphere, should I sleep with my head to the north? I have a video actually on this. So if you go to my YouTube page, you can type in, I'm not sure what the title would be, but basically just zoom through my videos and you'll find this video talking about head position and sleeping and everything. They've done some studies on it. Pretty sure you want your head facing west. So if you're laying down, you're okay? Pretty sure that's what it was. It's not north-south though. That was like the least favorable direction if I remember correctly, but I have a whole video on that. You can check that out. Thank you, Reflections, for the super thanks. And could the Carrington event have been some kind of celestial body impacting the sun? It is possible that you could get some sort of cosmic influence, either radiation or an actual impactor to trigger some explosion on the sun, like a domino effect. So it's possible. We don't really have that much data on the Carrington event in general and what was happening. So there's a lot of unknowns, uncertainties. Certainly there's a lot of events that have occurred across time that there's probably an additional component to it that we're just unaware of. But now that we're taking all these really high depth, very close observations of things, we're going to catch these things in action. Like Shoemaker Levy that impacted Jupiter. That was really cool to catch live. That comet flew in and just disintegrated. And James, thank you for the super thanks. So here we see the seismic energy radiating out from that magnitude 6.1. Look how it's sweeping across North America and through the seismic network and how quickly that's occurring, okay? So you get this fast compressional wave. And I'm going to reset it because it's going to fade out pretty quick. But we get this fast compressional wave to go through like that. There it is. Then you get the shear waves to follow behind. And then you get the surface waves to follow behind that. So really quite amazing to see this seismic shock wave go out across North America from a location that typically doesn't get any earthquakes. This is very unusual earthquake right here, the 6.1. And then afterwards you see that just the entire network is just lit up in general with this low grade seismicity as well, following up afterwards. So all of North America, every single fault, all the supervolcanoes and more, right, have just been jolted by this. The downstream effects of this are unknown. Keep that in mind. It's only 6.1, but clearly we see the seismic energy go across. We know all these systems are interconnected. We have a solar storm impact coming in just hours, probably. Expected to bring in a G3 geomagnetic storm. We just got out of a storm. We have more activity, like Earth is energizing, all this stuff. And we do have these circulation changes due to El Nino, the super El Nino and more. Anything can happen. Let's just say that. This is very unusual. Last time we had a quake in this location, close by, 1880. It's been 126 years. And this one's stronger at 6.1. Other one, magnitude 6. So wild times. Hopefully, no one was injured. I don't think anyone was injured from this. That'd be kind of mind-blowing to me. I mean, maybe someone got knocked off their feet if they were really unsteady to begin with. But in general, this earthquake really just being a heads up to everybody, a warning of what's possible, though unlikely. And it is possible this is a foreshock. That it's a low probability. I'd say it's probably like less than 1%, but it is possible that this is a foreshock to something bigger. So if you're watching this right now and you live anywhere in this location on the coast, just know where to go to high ground if there's a tsunami. It sounds crazy, but just know where to go. It takes 5 minutes to formulate a plan and just tuck it away in the back of your head. So you're not like a chicken running around without your head if it happens. Super unlikely. I wouldn't definitely freak out about it and go to sleep worried and have PTSD nightmares for the next 3 months or something, right? But just make sure you're aware, prepared, just like you are for hurricanes or more. And in general, here's kind of the bigger thing. We're seeing the Earth go through a geologic transition that we've never seen before. What's happening right now on our planet is historic in a geologic sense. So we don't know what the future holds. Every degree C that we go up in temperature globally, 7% more water in the atmosphere. Of course, the Earth itself is hotter. There's more lightning strikes when the atmosphere is hotter and when there's more water vapor. So we're talking about a lot more electrification across the planet. The global electric circuit is stronger. Stronger electric currents in Earth's surface, in the ionosphere, more plasma. All these things interact with Earth's faults, Earth's volcanoes, right? These natural geologic systems which can have big, tremendous effects. We can even see changes to Earth's wobble, its Chandler wobble, which is a 433-day wobble of its rotation. Its spin axis, it's about 10 meters in deviation, right? That completely shut down back in 2015. It's starting to get back up now. We've seen things like that before, but this is a historic, for a limited record, reduction in the Chandler wobble, which is a free oscillation of the Earth. There's also a forced wobble, which is the annular one based off of the orbit of the Earth around the Sun. So every 365 days, there's also that wobble. That didn't really change much. But there's historic changes unfolding right now. So with that, we're talking about whole new things happening that, yeah, the old paradigm is going to say isn't possible. Or we don't know, right? Like what, we know that there's like weird volcanic systems here too. We're coming into more realization of these old volcanic systems, old faults there. Like we simply, a lot of this stuff we don't even know exists. Old faults are super latent, ancient. They've been quiet for millennia, like hundreds of thousands of years. But as the Earth electrifies and these unprecedented geologic changes are happening at a human rate, right? At our time scale, anything can happen. In general, anything can happen. Stronger hurricanes, right? Hurricanes come over, they exert a huge amount of pressure. They're flexing the crust of the Earth underneath them. They're generating these atmospheric gravity waves that influences the ionosphere, the electric potentials, but they also generate these pressure waves at the bottom of the ocean. We simply know a lot less than we think we do. And so this 6.1, I would say in general, is a wake-up call for recognizing these potentials that we're unaware of, but we're not so clueless that we don't know that we don't know. So now we know that we don't know. Basically, that's my perspective. You can have your own perspective, and I encourage you to do your own research always. But that's the update for you. So let's see if there's been a couple more super thanks that have come in. Let me jump on these. Super thank from Gray Eyes. Thank you so much for that. And from Love Machiavelli, any opinions on Greece? Uboya, I think you're talking about the earthquake that struck Greece recently. So let's go here. I don't know if that's exactly the place that you're talking about though, but let's check it out. Here we see this magnitude 5.2 that struck Greece. We see also some aftershocks, 4.4, 4.9, 4.1. North of Athens. Greece gets magnitude 5s. It's nothing really to worry about. They get much bigger earthquakes than that. If we still have our big map, let's actually, this is a good one. Let's go here. Let's just modify this search and choose our rectangle to include more of Greece and the Aegean and more. So let's go down like that. Greece gets big earthquakes. Again, this is magnitude 7 that we're selecting for here. And look there, magnitude 7.2, 1905. Magnitude 7.2, 1981. Magnitude 7.2, 1949. So 7.0, 7.3, 7.9, 1903. So Greece gets big earthquakes. Typically, though, they're off the coast, but they can be inland as well. I don't think this 5.2 is necessarily an indication of something bigger coming. Thankfully, it wasn't bigger. That's what we can say on that. Have you ever seen the feed of an electronic fetal monitor tracking contractions during birth? Curiously similar to the solar cycle feeds. No, I can't say I've seen that, nor do I really know how to respond to that question, but thanks for the interesting thing to consider, to think about. And for all the parents out there that have seen that, maybe this is triggering something in your brain. So thank you for that super thanks, Renee. Great things. Is there a relationship when a volcano ejects material, then earthquakes subduct the material, replacing it? When are you making a book on your science? Yeah, the book has to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we're getting close to feeling confident enough to put everything in a book. Let's just say that. But is there a relationship when a volcano ejects material, then earthquakes subduct the material, replacing it? I don't really know what you're saying there. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't really. I can kind of see what you're saying, but I don't really understand, and I don't want to just spend 10 minutes, going kind of off the rails with something that I'm not even sure I'm responding to correctly. So thank you for your super thanks. But these are long geologic cycles. What I can say is that subduction is like a millions of year long cycle. So I think we're talking different time frames here. Volcano erupts, that's like a human thing, right? Boom, it happens. Boom shakalaka. Subduction is a very long time frame. So they're not so connected in terms of temporal, like temporally, they're not so connected. They are obviously connected. A lot of volcanoes are driven by subduction, but in the way that you're thinking, I think not really a connection. Juju, thank you for the super thanks. Much appreciated. We'll do this as the final question. Jessica, is it safe to say we're safe living in Sweden, Scandinavia at times like this? I think our neighbors in Norway recently felt quakes. Love all your work, Rainbow. Yeah. In general, this is an area that is not that seismically active. If you do get quakes, they're like magnitude 4. We can check it out. Let's do a quick search just to give it a look. But let's type in magnitude 4 quakes, and we can leave 1500. It'll be kind of crazy, but let's re-choose our box here for the great countries of Scandinavia. Kind of set it up like this, and even go a little higher on that. Boom. Let's see what we got. Still loading. Okay, strongest earthquakes for this. 6.1 Norwegian Sea, 6.0 on the Gokul Ridge, 5.9 Norwegian Sea, 5.8 Gokul Ridge, 5.8 Gokul Ridge. Most of them are there, but we do get this cluster here. This is interesting. This is 1929, 1937, 1984. So see what I'm talking about with these quakes and kind of like odd locations? This is a good example of that. And then we see a bunch of magnitude, we get a lot of magnitude 5s off the coast. As you can see, 5.1 there, 5.5. Here's a magnitude 5.4, 1984. So we get that. Let's see what type of earthquake this is. Probably extensional. We don't see a moment tensor plot. So that's pretty far back. If we have a more recent one, let's see what's new here. We did have this 4.0 being the most recent for this. That's off the coast though. We're gonna have to really zoom in. Let's see, what's this? 2010, Sweden, 4.2. See, these aren't really quakes to worry about. So in general, like, I think what I said stands as it relates to just as Earth electrification continues, like we can start seeing more quakes in weird places. But in general, as it relates to earthquakes, you guys are fine here. There are bigger things to worry about there. Earthquakes wouldn't be top of my list, that's for sure. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all so much for watching, everybody. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Please smash that thumbs up button, help this channel grow, get this video out to more people. I will keep you up to date on everything that's happening. Actually, I was going to make a whole bunch of videos today. I have a whole list of things that have been occurring other than this, but then this popped off. So it's like, okay, I got to cover this live for you because this is significant. Again, last time this happened, 1880. So you can follow me for updates in between my videos on YouTube, where I post almost daily, here on YouTube almost daily, but in between I do post to my X account at Stefan Burns Geo. You can follow me there, and I post a lot of like animations, clips, whatever, good information, but short, bite size. People ask me sometimes for shorter videos, things like this. That's where you go if you want the short stuff, okay? This is where we go in depth. And we do it almost daily. So earthquakes, volcanoes, severe weather, geomagnetic storms. We're waiting on a solar storm impact right now. It's about to come in. Space weather, solar activity, planetary alignments, and resonances. Right now we have Venus conjunct Jupiter in the sky. So we do have this celestial planetary alignment with the 7.8 earthquake and the 6.1. Kind of interesting. As we were in a high-speed stream, which is connected to earthquakes. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. We've connected all together and much more. Thank you all. Wishing you all well. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video.